Very much welcome to this webinar here at AVT Business School with CEO Jeff Gravenhorst. I am Casper Nørby. So for some months we have been living with this COVID crisis. For some months we have trying to make sense of it and trying to mitigate the effects of the crisis and maybe even the lockdown. So now for many of us, it's also begun to be an opportunity to look ahead to what is in store for us on the other side of this crisis when we are in the phase of recovery. And that's what we're going to talk about this afternoon. We're going to talk about the crisis, its impact, but we're also going to look ahead to what's in store for us when we are beyond it. What's the impact on our employees, on our markets? What's the impact on customer behavior? That's what we're going trying to look at this afternoon with Jeff Gravenhorst. Here at AVT, we often see ourselves, we use this metaphor as our mission, as we are a greenhouse on a hill. So what we're really trying to accomplish today is to have this discussion with Jeff. But also we can distill some insights on what's going on in our environment and what impact will it have. So please think about how you can bring that home. And then we often say we're on a hill. It means we look at the horizon a little bit together. So we can actually see if we could chart a new course when we're done with this, use some of the insight. So that's our level of ambition with this webinar. But I'm very pleased to have Jeff here, Jeff Gravenhorst, who is the CEO, as you know, of ISS. He's been with ISS for the last 18 years, first as the CFO in the UK and later as the group CFO. And the last 10 years as the CEO. He's just recently announced that he's stepping down here on 1 September. We can ask some questions at the very end of our conversation about that. But first we're going to look into the COVID crisis. So kicking off the discussion, my first question to you, Jeff, is really as to the impact on ISS. And ISS is a company who are active in 70 countries. You have nearly 500,000 employees. So I must assume that it's very different environments to operate in. The virus has impacted societies differently, and lockdown and social distancing measures are not homogeneous around the world. So my first question to you, how do you actually support and manage this heterogeneity with all these subsidiaries around the world from headquarters?
Yeah, that's a good question, obviously. But I think, as you say, I think that we need to put the whole thing into the perspective of ISS. So if you know, today ISS provides cleaning services, catering services, technical services. All of it, almost all the 500,000 employees works in other people's homes. I.e., we work at Novo, we work at Barclays, at Danske Bank, at Takeda, Lego around the world. So all of this is always done by and large by client and across the world, as you said also. So the conditions, even though the disease is the same or the virus is the same, the way we work or the conditions we work under are different country by country. But the one thing that is the same is, of course, the leadership part of the job. And it is guiding and maneuvering through this crisis, and the tools are pretty much the same. You'll have some available in some countries, others in other countries, and then of course a good way to support the countries is talking about the experiences we have across the world. So the number one thing, of course, is to put together sort of a command center, which is here. The command center is then gathering all information from our countries, putting together a playbook, and the playbook is, one, we need to preserve the cash, we need to preserve our liquidity, we need to have agility for the next 3-4 months. Because when you hit the crisis, you have no clue what's going to happen. The first goal we had was around 2,000 people we sent home in Norway. 2,000 people in Norway. That's a lot of people that suddenly is closed down, and is closed down in various types of clients. Oil and gas clients, banking sectors, the aviation sector, the hotel sector. All of them were exposed to the Norwegian market. So sort of the whole thing of getting up to speed very quickly of how do we maneuver through this? Because who's going to pay for the salaries for 2,000 people? Who's taking care of the safety of the rest of the 470,000 people around the world? And how do we ensure that we have enough training and equipment and so forth to make sure that happens. So to do that, command center set up, we have a very, very clear structure. It's a little bit like an army. So obviously you have a direct line where you have a regional head and then the country heads, and they're on daily calls. It's one with the regions, so 3 regions. They have daily calls with all countries, and then we have weekly calls with the group command center where we would go through. I would go through one country at the time, and looking at what are we doing to preserve cash, how are we making sure that the business units that is under attack or that is influenced the hardest, we measure whether they'll come back again and they'll be okay on potentially the other side, or do we need to take different measures now and not use furlough, but actually close them down? That's probably the toughest part of it. And then thirdly, how do we come out of this in a stronger position than we went in? So this is a 3-tier sort of work stream. 1, survive. 2, come out with the right run rate. And 3, how do we get stronger on the back of this? And of course, with the cleaning product and hygiene conditions and so forth, there's plenty of opportunity for that. But that's the point. And then it's country by country every single week, and by day, of course, from a regional into the countryside. That's a very structured program, and unfortunately, we had a malware attack a little bit earlier this year, so it was a little bit the same drill. So we got hit twice globally, which is not the easiest thing to be in, but that's the only way to run through it.
If I may follow up on the decision structure you put up here in the COVID crisis, how does that compare? So I understand there's some tough decisions to be made, and naturally goes to executive management to monitor and take responsibility. On the other hand, maybe conditions are somewhat unique in each of the countries. So is it also a case for maybe greater autonomy and decision-making power, or in some aspects, given the very maybe different circumstances that they're in?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a time for agility. So it's not about decision power. It's about following up, being in control, and having cash flow reporting on a daily basis. Not about deciding it, but it's actually knowing where's the cash, who needs it, who has it, and then to turn it around. That's the first part. So you got to have that under control. That's not about handling the local autonomy, because that's extremely important. Number 2 is, of course, are we taking the right decisions or sense of urgency by country? So it's not actually influence on what decisions they take, but it is how are we taking decisions in the country? So it's more listening to what's the actions, what are they doing, what's available, have you looked at the furlough programs? Then we put up a centralized E&Y support program, which was E&Y in the entire world would understand the local packages that the government were putting in play, and then putting that available to the country. So that we had a control that the processes of thinking through everything was in the country, but the agility of taking decisions we left to the countries. Then we could question them. And that's why it was so important on a weekly basis to go through a country and say, okay, have you thought about that? Do you really think that hotel business is going to come back? Is it the right thing to put them on furlough, or should we just bite the bullet now and then start doing some redundancies instead? That's a fine balance all the way through, from a people management perspective, but also from a preserving business perspective. But you're quite right. It's very, very local. But then again, the strength is how do we work together on that? And then, of course, also having countries listening to other countries. So country managers sharing experience with other country managers has been extremely important in this process. So that's the group function responsibility.
A slightly different question. Maybe someone's a little jealous because you're in so many countries, all of us trying to figure out what's going out there. But it looks like you might have a lot of touch points, at least from the outside, being in all these countries. And I think when you're quoted for saying that in many instances, you're the first in the building, your service, and you're last out at night. So that assumption, is a little bit like going to our peers at Maersk Line. They often have a very good sense of how the world economy is going because it reflects in indication on freight. So maybe you're a pretty good indicator, or maybe have some good insight into where are we in terms of getting back to something that looked like normal, given all the insight you potentially might have. That's a question to you. So what's your sense of where we're heading? And then are there, of course, there's regional differences, there's sector differences, but But what are the impression, and do you actually gather these data and analyze them a little bit in HQ, if I may ask?
Yeah, we have, as part of this command center, there's both a macroeconomy, so outside in, so what happens in country by countries, what's the impact, what programs coming around. Then we have an outside in on customers. A lot of our customers are very big, large enterprises, and there are lots of great publications on all types of customers on a daily basis that we get in, we share with our countries so that they know which one to keep an eye out for. Then, of course, we have our own internal information, which is how many people have we, how many sites have we closed down for what types of customers, whether it's customer segment or individual customers. And the sort of the summary of all of that means, if you take it from a customer segmentation first, the hardest hit areas is the aviation, it's leisure, it's everything to do with travel. It's of course, we're hit at the same time by an oil and gas crisis, so everything to do with oil and gas is of course somewhat under pressure. But in the bigger scheme, it's a smaller part for us. But from an industry perspective, that's definitely hard hit. From aviation, the airlines, those are the ones who are really hard hit. Airports are of course also hit, but they are typically have a different set of ownership structure so they can get through it. So that's the segments that we see from a customer perspective. Of course, leisure, as I said, hotel industry, very hard hit. And if I look at, is it on its way back? No, not really. We had in Denmark one route that was a route that was open today between Denmark and Aarhus. It doesn't really move the needle. It's still very, very fragile. And when I look at the industry, we will see them coming back up to a higher higher gearing in but not until the end of the year. So we look at the numbers like big airlines expect the third quarter is going to be half or even less, and then we see a little bit more in the fourth quarter. I'm sure you also have these statistics, but from an activity perspective, clearly there's not a lot going on right now in neither airlines nor airports. If you look at segments like banks, they are very good at working from home, so that hits us, but they're still up and running. So banks are really still running at a high level. A lot of businesses are even having higher efficiency as we speak, and that's quite interesting to follow in the ones that can live offline or from home, or not offline, but online and working from home. But segments like manufacturing, it depends on the lockdown. So the pharma, the critical ones, has been up and running for a long time. The offices has been down. Again, if you take food processing side, up and running for most of them, but the offices has been down. So again, it really is a blurry picture across the world. So it's probably better to look at it from a geographical point of view. Nordics has sort of come going back now. Norway has been hard hit. But at the end of the day, we can see them reopening, nice and quiet. I've seen Denmark, it's as if we were never out. Having said that, there's still a lot of workplaces locked down. So we don't necessarily feel like that, but it's the reality. If you take Europe as still a hard hit on the lockdown, if I look at the number of people we have sent home, we are still at the same level now as we've been 1 month ago. And we're talking more than 50,000 people that sent home. And we can't work from home, as you can probably work out, to the same degree. But that's actually still the same level. So even though it feels like the world's coming back, it's really stabilizing. That's all we can see right now. And obviously, Nordic a little bit better, Central Europe still slow, UK really bad still, and we don't quite see when that comes out. US extremely bad, particularly New York, New Jersey. California looks better, but they don't want to go back because they can all work from home. And then Asia is a little bit of a melting pot of Indonesia being sort of late in the cycle, India late in the cycle, China's out on the other side. So I know it's a big blurry picture, but Asia probably a little bit in the middle, US still bad, Europe North is good, South is not that good, and UK is a question mark. That's the overall I can say. And then of course the industries, you already worked that out. But the more you are international traveling and so forth, the harder it's going to hit you. And for longer, it's going to hit you.
So we have a lot of current and we had a lot of immediate and current impact. So if we take look a little bit into the horizon and once again, it's a question for all of us and the businesses we're in, also here in education, for instance. what's going to be the lasting impact? So people, and maybe turning to ISS, to some of your core business, the way we go to the offices, is that going to change? Rumors about less open office, fixed route to the office, you have to use the same toilet even. So if you're looking into the crystal ball, maybe on one area, because we discussed a lot of industries, what's going to be the impact to some of your core business around offices? Is that going to significantly change? Going to be some lasting impact that we have to deal with and adjust to as businesses?
There will be some lasting sort of impacts from all of this. I think number one is that we all understand what a pandemic is now. And like it or not, this was a light one. It could have been a lot worse. It's going to be very bad on the economy, that's for sure. But from a human health perspective, this could have gone a lot worse. It could have been a much more aggressive disease or virus than it is. And we have to understand that it exists. And that, of course, has an impact on hygienic conditions, on what requirements we place to each other as countries. So let's take, just for the sake of the argument right now, the root cause of this one, probably wet markets or something like that in China. Will you have embargoes? Will you have sort of restrictions of dealing with countries who's got more wet markets, for example? How can you work with that? That's one point. The other point is, of course, the whole hygienic conditions about handshaking. How do you greet each other? Maybe we should go to the more Asian greeting instead of the European greeting with the hands. We all know that once living in Denmark, apparently it's part of being a Dane that you have to shake your hands. Is that going to go ahead? So go away. So there's a lot of cultural changes, but it's going to drive hygienic conditions. The whole sanitizer part, the washroom part, the monitoring on the washroom part. For years, we've had the IoT in place where we can actually monitor how many toilet visits, how many hand washes, and how many hand sanitizer visits, and does it correlate? And can I see a difference between the male and the female? And unfortunately, I can. So I can give you those statistics, not by name, because not allowed, but by masses. And there's a lot to do on that, even in Denmark. And that's different in the UK, and it's different in other countries. So I think we'll see a lot more following up and follow through on those things. We can actually restrict the spreading of diseases quite significantly. So a new way of being together, a new way of putting requirements and measurements will come across, but also new offices. So that's not new, because actually for many years we've been driving virtual workspaces, and we've been driving that you don't have to have a space for everyone that comes in. Now, is it counterintuitive? Are we going to have, I want to have my own office, I want to have a lock on the door so nobody else is in here? No, it's not going to happen. It's far too expensive. It's not going to go back to that. But you will see, and you will of course expect me to say that, you'll see more hygiene stewards that will disinfect the workplace on a more regular basis. But we will have open offices, but we'll probably have more assigned seating. So maybe 2 or 3 people will share the same seat, and then we have desanitizing or disinfection of those seats on a regular basis. The restaurants will be different. You will not have buffets anymore. It will go away all the time. We might have some for a period of time, but I think it's gone. Buffets is not the way to go anyway. You'll have much more serving of the platters and so forth. But what we also have seen is that there's a huge urge to go back to the offices. So even though we know that the lasting impact is you can work from home and some are more efficient, but you can also work or you also need to go back and get the culture back. And we can see people piling up to go back in the offices. In this house here, we're now at 60-70% of our employees coming back, and we only ask the ones who want to come back to come back. So there is this eagerness to go home and come home in the office and get the culture back in underneath the skin. So it will change, but it will be more an event center, more sharing, more culture building, and probably work with better workstations from home as well. So I know it's a long answer and we don't have that much time, but there are lots of things changing, but it's also accelerating things that we saw already before, and then probably less hot desking without knowing who's been sitting there before.
Okay. Maybe just, thanks for this very interesting answer. Maybe quick follow-up. So not being a deep expert on your industry in facility management, but do you think there's going to emerge maybe a high-end, you could say, in terms of facility management that will be able to create a low infection environment, be consulting and delivering that? So is that a type of service that might emerge in the market, and some of the big players who can live up to the standards will then be able to go for that market? If it's not already existing, I apologize for my maybe not deep understanding, but it could be something that could be emerging to a large extent.
There are lots of cleaning standards in the industry, but I think the most important thing is it carried out, and how do you verify it, how do you document it? There's a lot of new products coming out of this, and there has been now for a few months that the deep cleaning has been quite an important part. That's now turns into an ongoing product. And of course, ISS has launched a high-end product. I will not tell the name yet. It's coming out as we speak, which is a branded product that goes out in the entire world. We've already sold the first ones, which is, of course, for once, it's great to be the world's largest cleaning company, because it's a service which is needed everywhere in the world. And the more blue chip the customers are, the more blue chip they want this service to be. So it comes out with a certification. So you get an international certification diploma to say this site is actually living up to those hygiene standards. So obviously there will be a lot of services coming on the back of this, but also in food for that matter. So it's the same thing with the food services as it is with the cleaning services. And then of course with the airflow and how you clean air. So for us, there's a lot of upsides from that perspective. Then the downside of course will be on catering product, and will be on the space. Will there be less space going forward? But again, for the big blue chip customers, there's plenty of space to go and hunt.
So it's a big question during the crisis, but also now where still many working from home. A question to motivation and how you create that sense of belonging, or maybe even to what do you do actually to maintain motivation and energy with your employees? Maybe especially at home, but maybe slowly coming back, but not to a full extent. And can you do something to articulate or communicate maybe your mission or your purpose even stronger these days? Could that kind of maintain some of that sense of belonging, and some of that social lack that many of us maybe have felt being at home?
Yeah, there's a lot of parameters in that, perspectives in that question. But number one, it's a lot easier to articulate why cleaning is important right now. So that's a good internal motivation of, we've always known it's extremely important, now it's even more important. And again, a lot of CEOs have seen more cleaners because they sit in the offices that's empty, and the only ones they meet are the ISS people of the world who are still in the building and still actually taking care of running the facilities and so forth. So that position has been easy. Now you need to spread it, of course. So communication has been a big part of these days, of being very close to your employees. I guess it goes for every one of us. We have a lot of virtual social gatherings and virtual scrums, if you will, by country, and making sure that people feel part of the overall organization. A big part of this, of course, is that we have larger sites now. So ISS is much more of a key account organization. So it's been easier from a key account manager to keep their hands around the people, even if they're home for a while, and make sure if they're on furlough, don't worry, we can see that you'll come back within 3 months, 2 months, whatever it is, and keep that motivation high. I think another part of it is to keep people safe, obviously, which is the number one priority. So making sure that everybody has the right equipment, the right training, and being very visual about this. And when we have made mistakes, then we're very, very quickly out there and we resurrect what we need to resurrect. And then I can keep promoting the whole stay safe point. So far, ISS has done pretty well. We have unfortunately had some fatalities, but you would expect that to be a little bit cynical with the number of people we have, with the spread that we have. But overall, we come through this in a decent way. So keeping that motivation or that up is purely down to communication, to leadership, being available. And that's also why this command center, being very close to the countries on an ongoing basis, means that the countries are very close to the contracts, and the contracts are very close to the employees. So if we didn't do it from here, then of course you're not leading them by example. Apart from that, I call country managers on a weekly basis, just out of the blue, and saying, we know, it's tough. It's hard to go through. And actually the whole balance between, do you let people go? Do you pay? Who's going to pay? Sometimes you don't know. People send home. Is it our duty to pay? Is the customer's duty to pay? Or is it the government's duty to pay? So ensuring that the payroll is actually run. And sometimes that's a really fine balance of we need to survive and you need to survive. That's a tough one. But keep your values at a very high level while you go through this, but also knowing you need to protect your business. That's not easy.
You announced that you're stepping down on 1 September from ISS, and you said, I think a great metaphor, that you have to learn to walk in flip-flops. So how does that feel, if I may ask that personal question?
I don't know yet. No, I guess it's a funny way of saying, but at the end of the day, you run a job like this for 10 years, and I was part of the executive group here also 5 years prior to that. So 15 years at the top of ISS is of course that's more than a full-time job, and eventually you end up asking yourself, do you ask the right questions? Are we doing the right things? And is COVID the right time to leave or not? At the end of it, this is not a due decision, so it's something you plan for a longer period of time. But I also think it is a good time because you come out on the other side, and as you talk about, there's a lot of new opportunities for the company. There's probably a lot of things that I forgot to ask, and a lot of energy that I don't know I don't have, because you think you're there, you think you're the same as you were 10 years ago. So from that perspective, you're your own worst enemy. So decision to step out is absolutely the right thing to do, but also for the person Jeff, because the person Jeff needs to know other things in life. And with that comes the flip-flops. And the flip-flop is have a little bit more time off, that you can actually learn how to be a little bit more free and think a little bit differently, and probably find other ways to contribute to the world society. I mean, the one thing that's been great about ISS is that it's all about inclusion. It's all about giving people who didn't have a chance. With that, of course, we have a unique opportunity to create value for our employees and our shareholders and so forth. And I think there's a good job for somebody new to come in and resurrect some of the investors that are the nurturing that we probably lacked a little bit over the last year or so. So that's a good way to make a good decision for Jeff and for ISS and for the employees.
Maybe the last question to push a little bit. So if you look back at your career, and if you had only one piece of advice that you would give to our stakeholders here, the participant and alumni around AVT, what would that single piece of advice be?
I think the most important thing is, I know it's a cliche, but it's to be truly agile. Not just say it, but truly agile. And it's an extreme provocation of your own self-belief, because we are not normally agile. We're normally pretty set on, once we have our mindset up, that this is the way to go. And sometimes that just delays changes. I think we can all change, and I've changed a lot over my years, but probably changed too late. I mean, if I've been a little bit more truly agile and welcoming to provoking statements and so forth, then probably I could have made adjustments quicker. And in my time, the world was probably slow. I remember when I was an apprentice, there was modems around and faxes, telefaxes, and the world was extremely slow on reviews and so forth. Now it's very quick. So even more so than ever, it's not really what you know, it's how you get to know the next thing. And that means true agility and staying less defensive and stuck in your own set, your own mindset. That would be how do you get beyond that, but still keep some sort of red thread through what you do. It's a tough thing to do, but it's probably the best advice I have.
Thank you very much.
Lifelong learning, now I'm with AVT, is probably a good thing to do. Lifelong learning.
Thank you for that remark as well, Jeff. Thank you for your time, and thanks for sharing both your outlook on the current and the future and business and your personal piece of advice. So thanks a lot to you from all of us and all the attendees.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. And stay safe.
And just in closing here, to all out there, thanks for attending, and see you at the next webinar or at the next online live module that we are conducting in here. Stay safe to all of you. Take care. Bye.